I'm Marcus Cole, 49 years old, and at my own brother's wedding, in front of 200 guests who were laughing at me, he and my father publicly called me the shame of the family. Before I tell you about the incredible moment, a decorated colonel, the bride herself, stood up, walked across the room, and made a sound that shattered that laughter into a million pieces of stunned silence. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I read every single one, and it means the world to me. The reception was a picture-perfect Virginia affair, held at a historic country club with imposing white columns, sprawling lawns that rolled down to a glassy lake, an air so thick with the scent of lilies and old money, it felt like you could taste it. I, however, was experiencing it from a less-than-ideal vantage point. Table 12. My seat was wedged into a forgotten corner, my back to the constant, rhythmic thump swing of the kitchen doors, my view of the head table almost completely obscured by a cold marble pillar. It was a masterclass in passive aggression, a placement my mother had clearly designed with surgical precision. Out of sight, out of the family portrait. I'd been nursing the same glass of lukewarm water for what felt like an eternity, a silent observer at my own family's celebration. From behind my pillar, I could see snippets of the perfect picture. My younger brother, Nathan, the forever golden child, was soaking in the adoration, his smile as wide and practiced as a politician's. My father, at the head of the table, was a booming, jovial patriarch, every laugh louder than the last. And my mother, a vision of maternal grace, floated between tables, her smile never quite reaching her eyes, especially when they flickered towards my corner. Then came the moment I knew was inevitable. The clinking of a champagne flute. Nathan stood up, a spotlight finding him, his grin widening. "I want to thank you all for coming," he began, his voice smooth as silk. He thanked his new in-laws, his parents, the bridesmaids, the groomsmen. A flawless performance. Then, his eyes deliberately scanned the room, bypassing tables of friends and family until they landed on my hiding spot. The smirk I knew so well, the one that always preceded a jab, appeared on his lips. "I even want to thank my big brother Marcus for making the trip," he announced. A ripple of polite, confused applause. "Most of you don't know him. He's a bit of a mystery. He works overseas. Does some kind of security work. A gate guard." The table of his friends erupted first. Then the laughter spread, infectious and cruel. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a roar, a wave of collective mockery that washed over me, hot and suffocating. My father, beaming, leaned into his own microphone. "He's the shame of this family," he boomed, delivering the punchline with theatrical relish. The room exploded. I just sat there, my hands flat on the table, feeling the vibrations from the laughter through the floor. I was an island, and the tide was coming in. And then a new sound, a sharp, deliberate scrape of a wooden chair against the polished floor. From a nearby table, General Peterson, the retired two-star I'd met the night before, rose to his feet. He wasn't smiling. His face was a thundercloud of indignation. He started walking towards me, and the laughter around him sputtered out, replaced by confused whispers. Then a second chair scraped. Sarah Foster, the bride, my new sister-in-law. She stood up. The laughter across the entire room died as if a switch had been flipped. Every eye was on her. She looked at Nathan, her husband of less than 3 hours, and the look on her face wasn't anger. It was something far worse, profound disappointment. She glanced at my father with undisguised contempt. Then, she turned her eyes to me, the eyes I remembered from a dusty, terrifying night in Helmand Province. They were no longer wide with fear. They were clear, focused, and filled with an unwavering resolution. She began to walk, her white dress rustling, a silent ship cutting through a sea of stunned faces. She didn't go around the tables. She went straight through them. My father's jaw went slack. Nathan's face drained of all color, leaving a pale, waxy mask of panic. Sarah stopped directly in front of my table, standing before me not as a bride, but as a soldier. The fuse for that explosion was lit 3 weeks earlier and 4,000 miles away, in my Spartan apartment in Stuttgart, Germany. The invitation was the first piece of mail I'd received from my family in 6 years. The cardstock was thick and opulent, the kind that feels important in your hands. Nathan Cole and Sarah Foster. My brother, the one who had methodically ghosted me, was getting married. It felt less like an olive branch and more like a subpoena. Tucked inside, a smaller, separate card confirmed my suspicion. My mother's immaculate cursive, as sharp and controlled as she was. Just 2 words. Behave, Marcus. It was a command, a warning. Not "we miss you," or "we'd love to see you." It was the same tone she'd used when I was 15, and she was worried I'd embarrass her in front of her friends. The casual condescension of it made my jaw ache. That evening, I was sharing a beer with my chief of staff, Bill Simmons. Bill was a bear of a man with a steady gaze and a mind like a steel trap. We'd served together on 3 continents, and he understood the geography of my life better than my own blood. I slid the invitation and the note across the table to him. He read it, a slow grin spreading across his face. Well, she's still got her fastball, I'll give her that. That's some world-class passive aggression. I'm not going, I said, the words tasting like ash. What's the point, Bill? To sit in a corner and be ignored? I can do that here for a lot cheaper. No, he said, leaning forward, his jovial manner gone, replaced by the intensity I'd seen him use in tactical briefings. You're looking at it all wrong. You think going is about them. It's not. It's about you. They think I'm a security guard, I muttered. My own mother tells people I do security work for a private firm. They have no idea who I am. Marcus, he said, his voice dropping, you're a lieutenant general. You've given 30 years of your life to this country. You've led men in combat. You've made decisions that have saved lives and shaped history. That is who you are. Their opinion doesn't change the facts. It just reveals their ignorance. He took a sip of his beer. I had an uncle like that. My dad's brother. My dad built a small construction business from nothing. My uncle was a trust fund guy, never worked a day in his life. At every family gathering, he'd call my dad Danny the ditch digger. For years, it ate my dad up. Then one day he just stopped caring. He told me, Billy, your uncle's words are a cage he built for himself. I'm not going to live in it with him. Bill looked me square in the eye. Don't go wearing your rank like armor. That's their game, the game of appearances. You go and wear your stars like memories. You sit there, you be quiet, you be dignified. You be the man you are, and you let them be the small, bitter people they are. You're not going there for their approval. You're going there as a quiet statement of fact. Let them see you, the real you, and let them choke on their own poison. His words resonated. He was right. This wasn't about seeking forgiveness or reconciliation. That bridge had been burned, the ashes scattered. This was about standing my ground, quietly. It was about showing up for myself. The last time I truly tried to show up was at my grandfather's funeral, 8 years earlier. That was the day the Cold War with my family turned into a deep freeze. I'd flown 18 hours from a forward operating base, arriving just in time for the service. I walked into that hushed, somber church, my dress uniform immaculate, my heart aching for the grandfather who had always had a kind word for me. I saw them in the front pew, my mother, father, and Nathan. A perfect, tight-knit unit of 3, with a conspicuous empty space beside them. My space. As I started to walk towards them, my mother intercepted me. Her face was a mask of polite concern. Marcus, darling, she whispered, her voice sharp. The uniform, it's a bit much. Mother, it's my dress uniform. It's a sign of respect. I know, but it's so ostentatious. It draws attention. It looks like you're trying to make this day about you, not about your grandfather. Her eyes darted around at the other mourners. We have to protect the family's image. Don't give people a reason to talk. She gently steered me towards a pew in the back, behind a pillar. Just for the service. It's for the best. I saw the look on Nathan's face. A flash of smug victory. Humiliated, I retreated to the back, sitting alone. I felt like a pariah. After the service, at the wake, they kept me at arm's length. The message was clear. My life, my uniform, my accomplishments. They were an inconvenience to the neat little story they wanted to tell about their family. That was the day I stopped trying. The silence that followed wasn't an accident. It was a policy. But now there was a new variable. Sarah Foster. I knew that name. I ran it through a secure database. Her service photo loaded, and the air left my lungs. It was her. The intelligence captain from Helmand. The memory was seared into my brain. A moonless night, the acrid smell of dust and cordite, the chaos of a raid gone sideways. We were clearing a compound when the shooting started. In the confusion, she stepped back, right onto a pressure plate IED. The click was sickeningly soft, but it echoed in the sudden silence louder than a cannon shot. She froze. The team froze. Protocol was brutal and clear. The person on the mine is a casualty. You don't risk a fire team for one person. You pull back, secure the area, and call in the EOD unit, knowing they'll likely be recovering a body. But I couldn't do it. I looked at her through my night vision goggles. She was terrified, but she wasn't screaming. She was a soldier holding it together at the literal breaking point. That night, I broke protocol. I ordered my men to hold and provide cover. I got on my stomach and began the longest, slowest crawl of my life. The world shrank to the few feet of dirt in front of my face. My fingers, clumsy in their gloves, swept the ground, searching for secondary wires. The silence was absolute, broken only by my own ragged breathing and the distant pop of sporadic gunfire. Felt like an eternity. Reaching her boot, I looked up. "Don't move," I breathed. My training took over. I worked with a surgeon's focus, my mind a cold, clear machine. I located the detonator wires. I traced them back to the pressure plate. My hands were steady, my movements precise. I clipped the right wire, bypassed the circuit, and gently slid the deadly disc out from under her boot. It was heavy, obscene in its simplicity. I crawled back, my body screaming with tension. "It's done," I said. "Step back. Now." She did, and her legs immediately gave out. As the medics rushed in, she grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Her voice was a raw, choked whisper. "You saved my life. I owe you." I never saw her again. Our paths diverged. She went on to a stellar career, a decorated colonel. And now, she was marrying the brother who believed I was a failure. The bitter irony was overwhelming. Did she know? Had she ever connected the dots? Cole wasn't a rare name, but a soldier, especially an intelligence officer, would likely remember the name of the man who saved her life. Or had she chosen to forget? Had the convenience of marrying into a good family been worth burying that memory? That was the question that gnawed at me. That was the real reason I got on the plane. I had to know. I packed a single dark suit. I was going as Marcus Cole. Not the general. Just the man. The brother. The ghost from a night of dust and fear. And I was going to get an answer. The condescending call from Nathan upon my arrival was just the overture. The pre-wedding dinner was the first act. The house was exactly as I remembered, yet it felt alien. My presence was an interruption, a deviation from their script. I was introduced perfunctorily and seated at the far end of the table, a geographical representation of my place in the family. The conversation swirled around me. Nathan's latest real estate coup. Sarah's family's upcoming trip to Europe. It was a performance of happy, successful people, and I was a silent audience member. Then General Peterson, Sarah's father's old friend, addressed me from the other end of the table. "Marcus, good to meet you. Sarah's father mentioned you were in the service as well. Army, wasn't it?" The table quieted slightly. Before I could formulate a response, my mother jumped in, her voice unnaturally bright. "Oh, Marcus does highly specialized security work for a private firm now, based in Europe. Very sensitive." Peterson's brow furrowed slightly. He knew the world. He knew the euphemisms. "Private firm? Interesting. Which one?" "It's complicated," I said, my voice neutral. Nathan seized the opening, laughing from his end of the table. "He guards very important gates, General. Keeps the riffraff out. We're all very proud. The subject was quickly changed, but I saw the look Peterson gave me. It was a look of assessment of a puzzle not quite fitting together. He knew he was being fed a line. The evening confirmed it. My identity was not just being ignored, it was being actively suppressed. My reality was inconvenient for their narrative. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect Virginia spring day that felt like a mockery of the storm brewing in my own life. The small cuts and indignities began early and escalated with the precision of a military campaign. First, the church. As guests found their seats, I scanned the elegant, handwritten seating chart in the vestibule. I searched the C section. Cole, Nathan. Cole, Mr. and Mrs. Robert. My parents. My name, Marcus Cole, was simply not there. Not an oversight. A statement. You do not belong. My mother, sensing my confusion, swept over, all grace and silk. Oh, Marcus, darling, she cooed, taking my arm in a grip that felt more like an escort's than a mother's. There was a tiny mix-up with the calligrapher. Silly me. Don't you worry for a second. I have the perfect spot for you. She led me not to the family pew, but to one in the back, behind a large stone pillar that offered a splendid view of the organ pipes and absolutely nothing else. Later, during the ceremony, the officiant's voice echoed through the nave. I now invite the parents and siblings of the bride and groom to come forward, to lay their hands on this couple and offer a prayer of blessing. I instinctively moved to stand to join them, but my mother, who had somehow materialized beside me, placed a firm hand on my chest. It looked like a loving, restraining gesture to the casual observer. But I felt the pressure of her fingers, the silent command. Let's not crowd the altar, honey, she whispered, her smile unwavering, painted on for the audience of relatives. It's their moment. I sat back down, my blood turning to ice. I watched my family, my father, my mother, my brother, form a perfect, holy circle around the happy couple, bathed in the light filtering through the stained glass windows. I was in the shadows, an outcast at the feast. It was then I understood their strategy wasn't erasure, but containment. They couldn't pretend I didn't exist, so they were building a narrative prison around me, wall by wall. At the reception, she led me to my designated seat, the now infamous table 12. This is a lovely spot, isn't it? She said, her voice bright. Right by the door. You can slip out if you get overwhelmed by all the commotion. I was thinking of you. It's for the best, really. Out of sight, out of everyone's way. This time I didn't just accept it. The weeks of simmering resentment, the fresh wounds from the ceremony, it all coalesced into a single point of cold clarity. I looked her directly in the eye, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of 30 years of command. I understand, Mother, I said. My tone made her falter. Thank you for the consideration. Sometimes, the best view of the whole play is from the back of the house. For a fleeting second, her mask slipped. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not guilt, but surprise, maybe even fear. The surprise of a zookeeper who discovers the animal they thought was tame has very sharp teeth. She recovered quickly, patting my arm with a brittle smile before gliding away. It was a small victory, but it was mine. I had pushed back, however subtly. I had shown her I was watching the game, not just playing a part in it. During the cocktail hour that preceded the dinner, I felt a strange detachment. I was an anthropologist studying a strange, toxic tribe. I was nursing a club soda when I drifted near a circle of Nathan's groomsmen. My brother was holding court, his chest puffed out, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand. He was on a roll, emboldened by the alcohol and the fawning attention. The guy's a total ghost, I'm telling you. Nathan was saying, his voice loud enough for several tables to hear. Shows up out of the blue every few years, acting all mysterious and important. Thinks he's some kind of war hero. He took a dramatic swig of his whiskey. Truth is, he was always a show-off, a guy who would embellish his deployments for personal gain. That's the real Marcus. Someone had to put him in his place. My hand froze, the glass halfway to my lips. The music, the laughter, the entire world seemed to warp and go silent, narrowing down to that one vicious phrase. Embellish his deployments for personal gain. It was like being struck by lightning. The words were a direct quote. The exact, venomous, career-destroying phrase from the anonymous Inspector General complaint that had been filed against me 8 years ago. The complaint that had derailed my promotion to Brigadier General. It had come from a concerned fellow officer who claimed I had falsified after-action reports to make my unit and myself look better. The investigation had been a 9-month nightmare. My integrity, my honor, everything I had built my life on, was put under a microscope. I was interviewed, my men were interviewed, my records were dissected. In the end, I was fully exonerated. The complaint was dismissed as unsubstantiated and likely malicious. But the damage was done. The promotion was delayed by 2 years. The cloud of suspicion lingered. I had spent years wondering which of my professional rivals hated me enough to do it. A colonel from another division, an ambitious major on my own staff. It had never, not for one single solitary second, occurred to me that the saboteur was my own brother. The pieces of the last decade slammed into place with a sickening thud. The 6 years of silence. The sudden, unexplained coldness. The carefully crafted security guard narrative. The constant, subtle dismissals. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was a long, calculated campaign of character assassination. He hadn't just been content to outshine me in the family. He had actively tried to extinguish my light in the one world where I had found purpose and respect. I looked over at him, laughing with his friends, completely oblivious that his drunken boast had just handed me the key to his dark little secret. My mother had built the cage, but Nathan had been forging the bars for years. A cold, terrifying calm washed over me. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching chasm in my chest. But on top of it was a layer of ice. The commander in me took over. The objective had changed. This was no longer about surviving a wedding. It was about witnessing the final act of a long betrayal. And I would be a very, very attentive witness. Returning to my table behind the pillar felt different now. The pillar was no longer just a physical obstruction. It was a tactical advantage. It was my observation post. The alienation I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a chilling sense of focus. I was a commander on a battlefield, and the enemy's intentions had just been made crystal clear. My brother's words echoed in my head. Embellish his deployments for personal gain. He'd said it with such casual cruelty, such unearned confidence. He felt safe. He believed his betrayal was buried so deep it could never be found. He had no idea he'd just confessed. I picked up my glass of water, my hand steady. The anger was a furnace inside me, but my training had taught me to bank that fire, to channel its heat into cold, hard logic. Emotion was a liability in the field. Here, in this ballroom filled with smiling enemies, it was a weakness I could not afford. My mission was no longer to endure. It was to observe, to gather data. A waiter, a young kid with a nervous energy, bustled by, refilling wine glasses. He made a wide arc around my table, his eyes deliberately avoiding me, as if my mother had put up invisible caution tape. A few minutes ago, the slight would have stung. Now it was just a data point. Note: subject is to be isolated. Narrative of invisibility is being reinforced by staff. The woman who'd asked me for directions to the ladies' room earlier passed by again. She gave me a brief, pitying smile, the kind you give to a stray dog or a piece of furniture that's in the way. Note: the civilian population has accepted the cover story. Subject is perceived as non-essential personnel. I let my gaze sweep the room, analyzing it not as a guest, but as an intelligence officer. I saw the power dynamics, the social alliances. I saw my father, loud and expansive, holding court. He wasn't a villain in his own mind. He was the proud father of the groom, the successful patriarch. His dismissal of me wasn't even personal. It was a necessary edit to maintain the story of his own success. A story in which Nathan was the triumphant sequel and I was the failed first draft. Then I focused on Sarah. Colonel Sarah Foster. She was a puzzle I had to solve. From my vantage point, I could see her profile. She was playing the part of the happy bride beautifully. She would laugh at something an uncle said, touch her new husband's arm at the right moment, smile radiantly for a photo. But I saw the tension in her shoulders. I saw the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Her eyes were constantly scanning, assessing. A soldier's eyes. She was looking at the exits. She was monitoring the mood of the room. A few times, her gaze swept past my pillar, and I felt the intensity of her focus even from a distance. Was she looking for me? Or was she just cataloging her surroundings? A habit she couldn't turn off? I began to analyze her situation as I would a tactical problem. Hypothesis A. She is a willing participant. She knew who I was, knew what Nathan was, and made a calculated decision. She traded her honor for a life of civilian comfort and perceived safety. In this scenario, she is an adversary. Hypothesis B. She is a victim. Nathan manipulated her, fed her the same lies he fed everyone else. She married him believing he was the hero and I was the villain. Her stress now is the cognitive dissonance of seeing the man who saved her life being treated like a pariah. In this scenario, she is a potential, conflicted asset. Hypothesis C. Something in between. She knew who I was, but didn't know the depth of Nathan's animosity or the story of his betrayal. She compartmentalized, telling herself the past was the past, until tonight, when the past walked into the room and sat behind a pillar. My gut, the instinct honed by years of reading people in high-stakes situations, told me it was C. She was compromised. She was trapped between the debt she owed me and the vows she had just taken. Her perfect, safe world was beginning to fracture, and she didn't know what to do. I thought about my grandfather, a quiet man who'd been a tail gunner in AB-17. He once told me, "Marcus, you can tell the measure of a person not by how they act in the sunshine, but by what they do when the lightning strikes." The room was bright with chandeliers and candlelight, but I could feel the electricity in the air. I could smell the coming rain. The lightning was about to strike, and I was very, very interested to see what Colonel Sarah Foster would do. The clinking of a champagne flute cut through my thoughts, sharp and insistent. It was time. Nathan was getting up to speak. He moved towards the microphone, a confident swagger in his step. The crowd quieted. He looked out at them, a king surveying his court. Then his eyes found my dark corner. He smiled. It was showtime. The final act of his little drama was about to begin. And I sat there, in the eye of my own personal hurricane, and prepared to witness the storm. Nathan grabbed the microphone from its stand, his movements loose and overly confident from the champagne. "Testing 1, 2, he said, and the slight feedback squeal made him grin. He was enjoying this, every second of it. "Wow," he breathed, looking out at the sea of faces. "Thank you all for being here. To our friends, our family. On the most important day of my life." He launched into the pre-rehearsed speech, a smooth and charming river of words. He thanked Sarah's parents for welcoming him. He thanked his own parents for their endless support. He winked at his best man. It was a flawless performance of a grateful, happy man. Then his tone shifted. The river of charm began to meander towards the rocky shores of his insecurity. "You know, family is a funny thing," he said, a note of mock philosophy in his voice. "The people you're stuck with, right?" A few of his friends chuckled knowingly. And on that note, I want to take a moment to thank my big brother, Marcus, for traveling all this way to be here. He gestured vaguely towards my pillar. It wasn't an invitation. It was an indictment. Heads turned, craning to get a look at the mysterious black sheep. I remained perfectly still, a statue in the shadows, my face unreadable. "Most of you don't know my brother," Nathan continued, his voice now taking on a tone of deep, fake pity that was far more insulting than open hostility. "He's a very private guy, leads a complicated life. He works for a security firm, overseas." He paused, letting the vagueness hang in the air before delivering the punchline. "He's basically a gate guard, a very, very serious gate guard, making sure the VIPs get through the very, very important gates." The laughter started at the tables closest to the head table, where Nathan's groomsmen sat, and spread like a virus. It wasn't a polite titter. It was loud, unrestrained, braying laughter at my expense. The sound seemed to suck the air out of my corner of the room. I felt the familiar heat climb my neck, but I locked my eyes on Nathan, my expression a blank mask. He was soaking it in, basking in the warmth of my humiliation. He raised his glass higher. "So let's give a big hand to Marcus," he shouted, his voice booming. "Who knows? If any of you ever buy a private island, maybe he can guard your gate. Who would want him?" The laughter intensified, becoming a physical force. I saw my mother at the head table, her shoulders shaking with mirth. Then my father, his face florid with champagne and pride, leaned into the microphone in front of him, wanting to add the cherry on top of this sundae of cruelty. "He's the shame of this family." His voice roared through the sound system, distorted and monstrous. "Always has been, always will be." The room exploded. This was it, the absolute apex of their performance. I was no longer a person. I was a prop, a punchline designed to make them feel powerful. And in that roaring silence of my own heart, a new sound cut through the noise. It was the sharp, solid scrape of a chair. General Peterson was on his feet. The laughter at his table immediately ceased. He was a man accustomed to being obeyed, and his silent, furious disapproval radiated from him like a cold front. His face, moments before politely bored, was now a mask of pure, undiluted rage. He started walking his path a straight, unwavering line directly to my table. He didn't look at Nathan or my father. He looked at me. As he moved, a pocket of silence followed him, the laughter dying in his wake. He reached my table. His tall frame blocked out the light from the chandeliers. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with a warrior's empathy. Then he looked at the head table, his gaze so contemptuous it was a weapon. "General Cole," he said, his voice low but carrying with the unmistakable timbre of command. It cut through the remaining buzz of the room. "It is an outrage and a personal insult to me that I should witness a fellow officer treated with such contempt." He extended his hand. I stood and shook it. His grip was like iron. "An honor to see you again, sir," he said pointedly. And then the second scrape, the one that changed everything. "Sarah." She rose from the head table, her movement a single, fluid motion. The room, which had been quieting, went dead silent. She looked at her husband, and the adoration in her eyes was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. She looked at my father, and it was with the disgust a commander reserves for a coward. She started walking. Her gait was not a bride's glide. It was a soldier's march, purposeful, unstoppable. The whispering train of her dress was the only sound in the vast, silent room. She didn't come to my table. She went straight to the small platform where the string quartet had been playing. She took the microphone from its stand. Her hand was rock steady. She turned, not to me, but to the 200 stunned guests. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice, amplified, was clear and steady as a rock. It filled every corner of the ballroom. "I apologize for the interruption to my own wedding reception, but there seems to be a grave, and frankly, disgusting misunderstanding here." She paused, letting her words sink in. "As my husband's former commanding officer in certain joint theater operations, and as a current subordinate officer to the man he and my father-in-law just publicly slandered, I feel it is my sworn duty to correct the record." She turned from the crowd, her back to her new family, and faced me across the room. In front of her entire world, in her white wedding gown, Colonel Sarah Foster drew herself up to her full height. Her posture became rigid, her shoulders squared. It was the posture of a soldier reporting to a superior. She raised her right hand to her brow in a salute so crisp, so perfect, it could have been a recruiting poster. "Allow me to properly introduce," she declared, her voice ringing with an authority that defied challenge, "Lieutenant General Marcus Cole of the United States Army, my commanding officer, and the man who saved my life." The silence that followed was a physical thing, pressed in on my eardrums. It was a tangible presence in the room. Then a sound. The sharp, distinct shatter of crystal on marble. My father's champagne flute had slipped from his nerveless fingers. Nathan's face was the color of ash. He looked like he had been shot. My mother's carefully constructed poise had completely disintegrated, leaving a gaping, horrified mask. And then, slowly, one by one, 4 other men in the room got to their feet. A gray-haired man in a tweed jacket who I now saw wore a Navy captain's ring. A young man with a Marine Corps haircut who had been sitting quietly with his family. 2 other men in suits who moved with the unmistakable bearing of career officers. They all turned to face me, and in the middle of my brother's lavish wedding reception, they raised their hands and saluted. I stood there, flanked by a 2-star general, vindicated by a colonel, and acknowledged by my brothers in arms. I looked at the smoldering wreckage of the head table. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt a great, heavy weight lift from my shoulders. A weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying for 30 years. I met my mother's terrified gaze. She was finally seeing me, not her son, the failure, but General Cole, the stranger. And she was terrified. The stunned silence in the ballroom couldn't last. It broke apart, not into celebration, but into 1,000 hushed, frantic whispers. The band, after a long, panicked look at each other, hesitantly began to play a soft, instrumental piece, but it was like playing music in a morgue. No one was dancing. No one was laughing. The party was over. The air was thick with the fallout. Guests avoided eye contact with the head table. They avoided looking at me. It was as if a civil war had broken out in the middle of the reception, and no one knew which side to choose. General Peterson had pulled a chair up to my pillar, and we sat in a small circle of silent solidarity with the other 4 servicemen who had stood. We were our own table now, an island of military order in a sea of social chaos. I knew I had to leave. My objective had been achieved. There was no victory lap to be taken, no speeches to be made. My presence alone was now a deafening statement. I stood, and the men at my table stood with me. "Are you heading out, son?" General Peterson asked, his voice a low rumble. "Yes, sir. There's nothing left to do here. If you need anything, and I mean anything at all, you have my card," he said, pressing it into my hand. "Thank you, General, for everything." "Nonsense," he grunted. "We look after our own." I began the long walk to the exit. I didn't look back at the head table, but I could feel their collective gaze burning into my back. I was halfway across the grand, empty dance floor when I heard the frantic, clicking pursuit. "Marcus! Marcus, wait!" It was my mother. She was practically running, her elegant dress hobbling her. She caught up to me in the grand, marbled lobby, her fingers digging into my forearm like talons. Her face, which had been a mask of horror moments before, was now twisted with a desperate, furious energy. "You cannot just walk out of here," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Watch me," I said, my own voice flat and cold. "Don't you dare be glib with me," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you have done? You have humiliated this family. You have ruined your brother's wedding." I stopped and turned to face her fully. The lobby was empty, a temporary refuge from the whispers inside. "Mother," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "let's be very clear. I did nothing. I sat at a table. I drank water. I kept my mouth shut. You did this. Nathan did this. My father did this. You loaded the gun, you pointed it at me, and you pulled the trigger. The only thing you didn't count on was me being bulletproof. This isn't about you," she insisted, her logic twisting in on itself. "This is about reputation. Our name in this town. Sarah's family. They're talking about annulment. The guests are leaving. There are reporters from the local society page here. You have to fix this." "Fix it?" I asked, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. "How, exactly, do you propose I do that? Should I go back in there and announce that it was all a big misunderstanding? That I'm not really a general? I'm just a gate guard who got lucky? Would that make you feel better?" "You have to talk to them," she pleaded, her composure finally cracking, her voice taking on a desperate, pleading whine. "Tell them it was a joke that went too far. A family roast. That's what it was, a roast. We were just teasing you. You were always so sensitive, Marcus. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of her revisionist history almost knocked me off my feet. She wasn't just a liar. She was an artist. A roast, I repeated, my voice like ice. You call that a roast? Your son, the groom, called me a nobody. Your husband, my father, called me the shame of the family. And you sat there and laughed. What part of that is a joke, Mother? You're twisting my words. You're being cruel, she cried, tears of self-pity welling in her eyes. After everything I've done for you, for this family, that's when I saw it. The core of her laid bare. She was the hero of her own story. In her mind, every act of suppression, every dismissal, every lie, was a necessary sacrifice she had made to maintain the perfect, fragile facade of her perfect family. My reality, my success, was a threat to her narrative, so it had to be contained. I slowly, deliberately, reached down and unpreed her fingers from my arm. I held her hand for a moment, and it felt like the hand of a stranger. Mother, I said, my voice softening not with forgiveness, but with a final, clinical pity. You have spent my entire life telling me to think of the family, to protect the family's image. I understand now that you genuinely believe that's what you were doing. A flicker of hope ignited in her teary eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, exactly. So you see. But you weren't protecting a family, I said, my voice dropping again, delivering the final diagnosis. A family is a fortress, a place of safety and support. You were curating a museum exhibit, an exhibit of a perfect family that never actually existed. And to keep the exhibit looking good, you locked one of your own children in the basement. You didn't protect a family, Mother. You erased a son. Her face fell. The hope died, replaced by a gray, empty understanding. She had no more arguments, no more lies. And now, I finished, there is nothing left for me to fix, because for me, there is nothing left. I released her hand. I turned and walked through the grand double doors, out into the clean, cool night air. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I just walked. The sounds of the disastrous party faded behind me, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the quiet hum of my rental car's engine when I started it. The war I didn't even know I was fighting was finally, definitively over. The next week was spent in the sterile quiet of a Marriott hotel room. My phone was a landmine I refused to touch. It buzzed and lit up with a relentless barrage of calls and texts from numbers I knew by heart. My mother, my father, Nathan. I imagined the messages were a cocktail of rage, blame, and pathetic attempts at guilt-tripping. I didn't need to read them. I was detoxing from a lifetime of their poison. I ordered room service. I watched bad movies. I sat by the window and watched the traffic, feeling utterly disconnected from the world. I was in limbo, a soldier between wars. The old war was over, but I didn't know what peace was supposed to feel like. On the 5th day, a text from an unknown number broke the silence. This is Colonel Sarah Foster. I understand if you don't respond, but I need to talk to you. Please. A dozen reasons to say no flooded my mind. I wanted to sever all ties, to cauterize the wound and never look back. But the commander in me, the part that believes in accountability and facing hard truths, won out. A mission isn't over until the debrief. I texted back a time and the address of a small, independent coffee shop miles from the hotel, miles from their world. Neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, tucked into a booth in the back. Dressed in jeans and a simple gray sweater, stripped of her bridal finery and her uniform, she looked younger, smaller. She looked exhausted. I slid into the booth opposite her. The air between us was heavy with unspoken things. Thank you for meeting me, she said finally, her voice low. You had something you wanted to say, Colonel, I replied. I wasn't going to make this easy. My forgiveness was not on the table. She flinched slightly at the formal title but nodded. Yes, first, for what my husband and his family did. And for my silence, for my part in allowing it to happen. There are no words to say how sorry I am. My actions were cowardly and inexcusable. I said nothing, just held her gaze. Second, she continued, taking a shaky breath, I need you to know that I didn't understand the full extent of it. The sabotage, the lies. I swear on my commission, I did not know. What, exactly, did you know? I asked, my voice flat. She looked down at her coffee cup as if the answer was written in the foam. He told me you were estranged, that you'd had a difficult time transitioning out of the service, that you were bitter about his success. He painted this picture of you as this angry, resentful ghost who haunted the family from a distance. He made it sound like they had tried to help you, but you pushed them away. And the man who saved you in Helmand? I asked, the question hanging between us. The man with the same last name. Did you think that was just a coincidence? Her face flushed with a deep, painful shame. No, she whispered. Of course not. I knew it was you the second I saw you walk into that dinner. My heart just stopped, but I was in too deep. I was 2 days from my wedding. I told myself it was a different life, that the man who saved me was a soldier, and this was my new life, a safe life. She looked up, her eyes pleading for me to understand. Marcus, I've seen enough. I've been in the fight. I wanted easy. I wanted a life where the biggest danger was a bad investment, not a roadside bomb. Nathan offered me that. He offered me a world without shadows. There are always shadows, Colonel, I said quietly. I know that now, she said, her voice cracking. I tried to escape one war, and I married myself into another. As she said it, the bell on the coffee shop door jingled. Nathan walked in. He looked like a ghost himself. He saw us in the booth and froze, his face a mixture of fear and resentment. He looked like he was about to turn and bolt. I told him to come, Sarah said, her voice regaining its steel. I told him this conversation was not optional. This ends today. Nathan trudged over to our booth, a prisoner being led to his sentencing. He wouldn't look at me. He slumped into the seat beside his wife. What's this, Sarah? An ambush. This is called accountability, Nathan, she said, her voice like ice. A concept you might want to look up. You are going to look your brother in the eye, and for once in your miserable life you are going to tell the truth. He shot her a venomous look before finally, reluctantly, turning his bloodshot eyes to me. I don't know what you're talking about, he muttered, the lie weak and reflexive. The IG complaint, Nathan, I said, my voice low and level, cutting through his pretense. 8 years ago, an anonymous report. Career setback. The exact phrase was embellish his deployments for personal gain. Your words, I believe. The color drained from his face. The last of his pathetic defenses crumbled. He sagged in his seat, the fight completely gone out of him. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Why? I asked. It was the only word that mattered. He was silent for a long time, staring at the scarred tabletop. When he finally spoke, his voice was a ragged whisper, the sound of a lifetime of resentment being scraped from the bottom of a barrel. Because I hated you, he breathed. I always hated you, even when we were kids. Everything was so easy for you. You were good at sports. You were good at school. Then you joined the army and you were a hero. Dad was hard on you, but he was focused on you. He obsessed over you. You were the son. You were the main character. And I was just the other one, the sidekick, the disappointment. He finally looked at me, his eyes swimming with a pathetic, watery self-pity. I just wanted to see you fail. I wanted to see you get knocked down. Just once. I wanted you to know what it felt like to be me. I listened to his confession. It wasn't the catharsis I might have once expected. There was no satisfaction in seeing him brought so low. There was only a profound, empty sadness. He had built his entire identity around his jealousy of me, never realizing he could have just built a life of his own. I stood up, the legs of my chair scraping softly on the floor. I hope you found what you were looking for, Nathan, I said, my voice devoid of heat. Because you sold your brother for it. I looked at Sarah. Her face was a mask of grief, She had hitched her wagon to a black hole. "Colonel," I said, giving her a final, formal nod of dismissal. I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving them to sit in the ruins of the safe life they had built on a foundation of lies. I didn't feel free yet, but I felt the beginning of it. Back in Germany, the clarity came. My pain wasn't unique. The world was full of soldiers who fought wars overseas only to come home to a different kind of combat, one they were unprepared for. Betrayal from family, financial ruin at the hands of loved ones, character assassination from the very people who were supposed to protect them. They suffered in silence, ashamed to admit their home front had collapsed. I would not be silent. Not anymore. I didn't call a press conference or seek publicity. That wasn't the mission. The mission was to help. I started small. I used my savings and my network. I learned about a young staff sergeant at Fort Campbell whose parents had mortgaged his house and run up his credit cards while he was in Afghanistan. I hired a forensic accountant and a damn good lawyer. I got him his money back. I found a Marine captain whose vindictive ex-wife was feeding lies to his command, trying to get his security clearance revoked. I made a few calls, connected him with the right people at JAG, and shut it down. I did it quietly, one soldier at a time. But in the military, the grapevine is the most effective communication tool on earth. A reporter for the Stars and Stripes newspaper heard about what I was doing. He dug into it, respected my wish for a low profile, but wrote the story anyway. He wrote about soldiers being betrayed on the home front, and about the quiet network being built to fight back for them. He gave it a name, the Resilience Fund. The story was like a spark in a dry forest. It went viral. My email inbox, which had been silent for years, exploded. My office was flooded with calls. But they weren't from my family. They were from generals, sergeants major, veterans, and civilians who had read the story. They didn't just offer sympathy. They offered money. They offered their legal services. They offered their time. From the ashes of my family's betrayal, something new and powerful was rising. It's been 5 years since that wedding. My 30 years in the Army are behind me now. I took my retirement, but I didn't disappear to a sunny beach in Italy. That life, a life of pure leisure, felt unearned, disconnected. My reality is here, in a small, sturdy house I bought in Washington State. It's nestled in a forest of tall pines, and most mornings, a cool mist rolls in from the Puget Sound. The air is clean and smells of rain and damp earth. It's quiet. My mornings are for me. I write, not memoirs, not tell-alls, just stories, fictions. It's a way to make sense of the world, to put chaos into a structured narrative. My afternoons, however, are for them. The local Army base isn't far, and I've become an unofficial volunteer mentor. I meet with the young captains and majors, the ones with the weight of command just beginning to settle on their shoulders. They're getting ready for deployments, for leadership challenges, for the kind of crucible that forges you or breaks you. I don't talk to them about small unit tactics or geopolitics. They have plenty of people for that. I talk to them about the things no one talks about the loneliness of command, about the moral injuries that leave no visible scars, about how to build a life, a real one, that can withstand the pressures of the job. I try to give them the map I had to draw for myself in the dark. The Resilience Fund has grown into a formidable nonprofit organization, run by a board of directors and a full-time staff who are far more capable than I am. I still sit on the board, but my real work is here, in a coffee shop on post, talking to a 28-year-old captain who is terrified of the responsibility of leading 150 soldiers into harm's way. That is my service now. Last year, a call came from the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense's office. They offered me a prestigious appointment to a Defense Advisory Board. A fancy title, a seat at a very important table. The Marcus Cole of 10 years ago, the man still quietly craving the approval his father never gave him, would have accepted in a heartbeat. But I'm not that man anymore. I politely declined. I told the 4-star general on the other end of the line that I believed I could be of more service right here. He understood. I only saw my mother one last time. I was in Virginia for a board meeting 2 years ago, and on a strange impulse, I drove through my old neighborhood. The house looked smaller. My mother was in the front yard, tending her rose bushes. She moved slowly, stiffly. The town had, of course, talked. The wedding story became a piece of local folklore. The perfect family had imploded in public, and the fallout had been devastating for them. Nathan and Sarah's marriage lasted less than a year. His business struggled. My father retreated from public life. Their carefully curated museum exhibit had been condemned. She saw my car slow down and she straightened up, shielding her eyes from the sun. I got out. We stood on the grass where I once dreamed of playing catch with my father. "I didn't know," she said, her voice thin and brittle as a dead leaf. "I didn't know how to protect you without erasing you." It wasn't an apology. It was a final, pathetic attempt at explaining herself, at framing her failure as a tragic mistake instead of a conscious choice. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel forgiveness. I just felt done. "Goodbye, Mother," I said. I got back in my car and drove away, and I didn't check the rearview mirror. My family tried to build my identity out of their shame and jealousy. For too long, a part of me believed them. But your value is not a reflection in someone else's broken mirror. It is a fire you build inside yourself. It is forged in your integrity, in your actions, in the choices you make when you think no one is watching. Peace isn't found in victory over your enemies. It's not in forcing them to admit you were right. Peace is the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you no longer require their permission to be who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever felt like you had to fight to be seen for who you truly are? Share your story in the comments below. And please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. It helps more than you know.